All right, let's get started. So, welcome to our January webinar. I'm Marlisa Post with Donor Database Experts, and we'll just go around and do introductions in case we have some new people. So, I've been with Donor Database Experts for about 4.5 years. Before that, I've been in the nonprofit sphere for, let's say, a long time, and working in public health, health and human services, animal shelter, museums. A breadth of experience. Denise, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been with donor database experts for almost 2 years. Feels like 2 years. And before that, I was actually on the client side of things, and I was a client for about 3.5, 4 years. And we went through a large database migration, and I led the data and operations side of things. So I led the gift processing and stuff at my previous organization. And then now I am a consultant here and lead also the gift processing side of things. So.
Thanks. And Steph.
I'm Steph Williams. I'm one of the other consultants here at Donor Database Experts. I've also been here for about 2 years. Before this, I was in the nonprofit world for a while, like pretty much everyone on our team, mostly on the operations, donor services side, overseeing a lot of, Razor's Edge management, reporting, all of that fun data stuff. Mostly healthcare or kind of healthcare adjacent, and a little bit of time in higher ed too. So now, like I said, I'm one of the consultants here, and I also oversee our data team that gets to help with all the fun data projects for clients. So.
Wonderful. So this is our January webinar. We are planning to do another full year of webinars. So if you do have any ideas, things that you would like to see, please reach out. But this one today is kind of a bookend to the one we did in December, which that one was talking about how to kind of end the year, get ready for the mad rush at the end of the year. And so today we're going to do the same sort of format, questions and answers, but now sort of talking about how to start off the calendar year and what things you should be thinking about doing and not doing with your data. So please do put your questions into the Q&A and we'll go through and answer them. So the first question is going to be just a general one. So now that the sort of year-end madness has settled down for most people, what it would be your top pick as something to do to start off the calendar year? And Denise, I'll start with you.
Top pick in the database.
Yeah,
So I'm always a prospect module person, and I always rolling forward the prospect module and rolling forward proposal opportunities. So making sure after you pull all your data, making sure that you have the ones from the previous year that are completed and everything marked as inactive so that you have a clean slate of looking at projections for what's coming up and what's in the pipeline for ask.
that's a really good one. I think that's one that people sometimes forget about. So that's a really good one. Steph, how about you?
I come from a few organizations that were very event heavy and had lots of direct mailing, so that was the other piece that I would like to do. Sometimes at this point, it might be a little late to start it, but at least a good chance to kind of clean it up. So one of the things I always like to do is take this time to review all of the appeals and packages from last year, review all of the events, and try to get as much of that set up going forward for this year. Even if you don't have all of the details on, when everything's happening, it's a nice chance to kind of literally export all of your stuff from last year, clean it up, make sure it looks right, make sure you've got the right, kind of name formatting, all of that stuff, and kind of start it nice and fresh for the next year. And then just kind of import in all of your appeals and packages, your events, your event types. I know as things change from, whether you're using Online Express or something else and going into NXT, sometimes different unit types and participation types and all of that stuff gets really cluttered up throughout the years. You're just kind of trying to fix it on the fly as things come in. So it's a good chance to kind of evaluate, clean it up, and have it all ready to go there, or at least kind of the framework there. Like even if you only have your appeal name and you fill in the dates and the packages later, it's all kind of there to start so that you're have a good, framework set up for the next year. Um, and it's also usually when I go through and check for like on the participant on the prospect side, this is usually the good time to go, okay, of those people you were trying to make one last ask for, kind of their last chance to stay on your portfolio. You're a month into January now, which I don't know how it's the end of January, but take a look at those people that, I feel like there's always some fundraisers that just don't want to let go of some of their prospects. And it's, they didn't give the year end. You gave kind of one last shot. Is it time to maybe roll them off of your portfolio and let them go back into whether, or whether that's your annual giving group and maybe some direct mail pieces will get them to respond again. It's kind of that nice chance to say, okay, who didn't respond to the year-end appeal, who hasn't responded in a while. Let's kind of clean up portfolios too for the next year going forward and refocus. So
Great. And for mine, I will say, and this is only because it's on my brain, one of the things
oh,
that, one of the things that
skipped right
I
past
do
it.
I do with a lot of our clients at the end of the year is help them with their end of year statements. Usually that's around recurring donors, if you have payroll donors or just monthly givers. But some organizations also do anyone who's given 250 and up, even if those gifts have been acknowledged, whatever your particular methodology. But the piece that a lot of people forget is to then go back and mark those gifts as acknowledged. So make sure that you've got all of that closed out. Because having gifts sitting as, not acknowledged can actually, in some searches and some things slow things down. So important thing to go through and do. So that'd be my top thing, just because you just did it, and you're probably still haunted by it. So go back and finish it.
That
Um,
made me think of another piece with recurring gifts. I know everyone handles their recurring gifts a little differently. I think, one of our recommendations and the way that I like to do it is if a recurring gift comes in off of a certain appeal, kind of give that appeal or that event credit for 1 year and then switch it to, maybe your more generic or evergreen, recurring gift sustaining, whatever that appeal code is. Now's a good time to take a look at those too, especially if you had a lot that came in at year end. It was kind of a monthly data cleanup project for us usually, but it's a good time to go back and see, okay, when things got crazy at the end of the year, what other recurring gifts are worth checking out? They've been going for a year. Do we need to switch the appeals? Do we need to switch, any other coding on them to make them that ongoing now until you hear otherwise piece instead of the whatever the original appeal was on them.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time of year to be thinking about all that. First of all, it's the new calendar year. Also, you depending on when your fiscal year ends, you're about halfway through your fiscal year. And this might be a lull between year-end madness and maybe when you're starting up spring events or things like that. So a good time to take advantage of it. It's funny, I used to, at my last job, always promise my assistant that there would be a lull where she could work on things, and that mythical lull never happened. So understand if that doesn't happen in your organization, but if it does, or even if not, just try to carve out some time to, spruce up the database, calendar year end and halfway through the fiscal year.
Mhm.
What are some things, and Steph, you touched on this a little bit, thinking about like cleaning up, especially solicitors, which I think is another thing that doesn't get a lot of love, and also related to solicitors. What about actions? So Steph, I'm going to start with you on that one and then go to Denise.
Actions are a big one. I think if your organization is using Razor's Edge well, which I think one of the things we like to tell clients is don't do another spreadsheet. Like you pay enough. And this qualifies for probably every CRM, but obviously Blackbaud's one we work with most. So like you pay enough, you might as well use it as much as you can. And so if you're doing it well, hopefully you're putting your future actions in. And I talk to them now, let's go open, put an action for the end of the year because I don't want to forget to follow up with them. Um, it's really easy to forget to go back and close those out. So I think that's one of the things with actions is let's go see what your open actions are for this, for the last year, and let's either move them forward, close them out, mark them canceled, whatever it is that you want to do with those, so that when the fundraisers are going in on their work centers and on their lists, they're not seeing these, actions that are 3, 4 months outdated or past due or whatever that looks like for your org. So that's a good one to clean up. It just feels like it's kind of that in between of the end of the year and like almost like some database spring cleaning going on and, kind of catching that stuff up. And then the solicitors, I think, were the other one you said, Marlisa, and that kind of ties in before. The rhythm that I liked to get on a lot of times with fundraisers was, okay, you've got, if they haven't given, if you haven't made any meaningful movement with them if they haven't given, if you haven't got in front of them in, is it 1, 2, 3 years, whatever that looks like for your org and, the different ones. It's kind of, all right, you've got until the end of the year to get them to do something, and then we're going to take them off of your list because they're not worth your effort anymore. That doesn't mean we don't value them as a donor. It doesn't mean that they didn't have maybe a very long giving, but obviously this one-on-one assignment relationship isn't how they're responding anymore. So let's pull them off and move them to your leadership annual giving or your direct mail or whatever the right, stage is there. So this is that time where I would usually pull a full list of all the solicitors, or all of the assignments, send them to the solicitor and say, unless you tell me and give me a good reason to keep them on, these people, they're getting removed from your list because you had 3 years, 2 years, they didn't give. And that's a good chance to kind of clean them out and helps them refocus on who their new people are too. So, and I think along with that, it's okay, who did move up last year? Who did move from maybe $1,000 a year to 5 or 10? And now these are the new people we need to assign. Try to do it more like quarterly, but we all know most of the money comes in at year end. So it's a good time to kind of flag those people that have risen up. So
That's great. Yeah. Denise, any thoughts around actions, solicitors, things like that?
I always think that along with what Steph is saying, it's a good time for like, oh, these people you didn't have an action for last year, but oh, you did meet with them. So it's also a good time to, before that kind of your metric year end kind of things come out,
yeah.
for them to go back in and be like, oh yeah, I did meet with that person or I did meet with this person. So I always like to give those gentle little pushes to the gift officers to get the data in so that they aren't using spreadsheets. And I also, along with the proposals, like to have them add future actions. So what does your year look like? We can't have all of your ask. I know a lot come in at the end of the year, but not everything can be asked in the last month of the year. So really look at if you have 20 outstanding proposals, kind of spreading those through the year, or what could you move forward fast, like earlier in the year and some of what you leave to the end of the year. So really, I like to use this first month 2 months to really frame up the year for the gift officers and try to help them come up with a plan and strategy for driving those asks and stuff that's out there. Otherwise, sometimes I feel like it gets put in the database and then forgotten about until the next time you meet. So,
I think too, one of the things we see a lot when we assess databases for our clients is that we see actions not being used enough or correctly. I think actions are sort of can be such a powerhouse, but people, either are putting things in notes or in an external, spreadsheet, Word document, whatever, instead of tracking, all kinds of meetings, emails, phone calls, all those things. And so this might also be a good time to think about, are you really using actions to the best of your ability, to the agency's ability?
Yeah.
What could we be tracking in them? As Denise said, what could we be planning in them? Actions are really powerful because they can remind you of things that you need to do, and you can even see some of that in the NXT space and things like that. So if you're not using actions, think maybe about how you could be.
Mhm.
So the next thing that, frankly, we always advise that clients do this throughout the year, and frankly, weekly, if you're not doing it monthly or biweekly, we actually even think weekly is good. And that's doing gift reviews and record reviews. And I'll describe it a little bit, Denise, but that's okay. And then I'm going to flip over to you since you oversee our gift processing. So these are two queries, and the one query is a gift query, and it has many, many fields, we suggest. And basically, these allow you to look at the data that's recently been put into the database and be able to spot problems before they become even bigger problems. So looking at, do the campaign's funds and appeals align? So sort by campaign and then see, oh, wait, this fund doesn't go with this campaign, so I need to fix that on this particular gift. Or this isn't the letter code that we usually use with this appeal. So it's really just having these queries set up, running them frequently, and sorting. One thing we do advise is that you don't just look back a week or two, have a couple weeks in a view, just because it's easy to spot trends. So Denise, what else, around, especially gift review, and then we'll go over to record review.
Gift review, I like to look at just a lot of times missing fields, or if there's a specific, um, a lot of times I also look at the unsolicited appeal. If there is a bunch of unsolicited appeals, like did something go out that we didn't have in the database, like an appeal go out that we aren't tracking and get that properly tracked. I also, one of my clients always says, I won't have a job if everything goes to unsolicited. So I need to show that they're coming from somewhere. So I always think about that with other organizations. And also the bigger gifts, I always take a look to see if they're linked to proposals because it's one of the easiest ways I mean, that it's very easy to miss when you're doing the gift entry to link it to that proposal and linking that, especially with soft credits. It's not going to pop up that there's an outstanding proposal out there. So I like to look at the high level gifts too and just make sure that everything's there that needs to be there.
Great. Steph, I know you and the team see a lot of the errors after the fact when they become big problems that need to be fixed. So what else could people be checking in
Yeah.
their gift entry?
Yeah, I think that one of the ones when Denise just mentioned it with the proposals, the other one for me are pledges. Kind of taking a look at those people that had pledges. I know everyone tries as much as they can to understand, that maybe this gift from a donor advised fund belongs to this person, or, this company actually is this person's giving it, and all of those pieces. But we all know at year end, it's just a matter of getting the gifts in quickly enough so this is kind of a nice time too. And I kind of quarterly before pledge reminders go out or however you do it, but year end I think is a great time. I used to always have a query set up that would basically look for anyone who had an outstanding pledge balance and a cash gift that like wasn't to an event or something obvious. Um, Gets tricky with the soft credits and things like that, but at least a way to double check, like, okay, hey, this $500 gift came in that we didn't really know what it was for. Oh, but this person also has, an outstanding $1,000 pledge payment or an outstanding balance of $1,000, and kind of that one last check before you close your books and send it to finance and run your pledge balances and all of that stuff. Like, did we miss any of those connection pieces throughout the year, but really throughout the last month of crazy when you're just trying to open the mail and get it entered as fast, on time. So that's a big one for me. The other one that goes in there too are duplicates because online giving comes through. We all know we try to match them as much as we can, but I know I'm not the only one that uses a couple different like burner junk email accounts when I sign up for things, and we know our donors do too. So that kind of last bit of, oh hey, this is a brand, look at your brand new donors from the last year, last month of the year, or however far back. Are they actually a name you recognize? Is it maybe, the husband of someone who, well, only the wife is in your, so whatever kind of duplicate management thing you can do when it's a slower this time of the year. Especially if you have a big direct mail program, getting those duplicates cleaned up before you pull your first big mail list. It saves your organization time not sending, and it also saves you a lot of goodwill with your donors if you're not going to send multiple pieces to the same address. So this was always a time if we had a little bit of downtime, we really tried to go after the duplicates too, because they just when your volume's higher, the duplicates, that all adds up too. So that's a big piece of it. Otherwise, again, I think it's kind of like what Denise said, just double check all of that stuff got linked together correctly as it came through. This was usually the time that we would start going through that stack of returned mail and updating addresses. You were focused on the gifts and your returned mail envelope pile just gets bigger and bigger. It's a good time to go through there and, mark people deceased, change their addresses, all of that kind of just general data health cleanup stuff. Um, Kind of to end last year and before you start in your next big mailings for this year.
And so that really leads us into the other half of this coin, which is record review. So that was going off of a gift query.
Yep.
So also having a similar thing set up for a constituent. And again, having many, many, many fields.
So
Um,
many fields.
so many fields. Uh, and it's the same principle. So these would be constituents added, recently, but again, making sure you've kind of pushed your date back enough that you can see the larger trends. The one I'll call out that I know can be a problem are constituents added because so they've been automatically added by the system when they've given a credit card gift. And the big thing we see missing there, things, depending on your saying, can be constituent code. Also, the ad sal is one of the big ones. So, Steph, what else do you, with the record review, you talked about a little bit duplicates, but what other fields or issues do you see, Steph?
The constituent codes are a big one, either not getting it or on the flip side, having multiple constituent codes, especially if on your forms you have it automatically adding for new, if you have it automatically adding for people, and it's just a generic individual or donor or, whatever you've got there. Checking those, I think also sometimes if you've had it added and you've since merged, people don't always double check to make sure that there's not then, two codes, or maybe they were a board member and then it came through as an individual and now you've got both and all of that kind of stuff. So cleaning up all of that stuff, and then the addresses and salutations was the piece I was going to mention. There is no default option yet that I know of in NXT or Unified View for Razor's Edge specifically. So that's a piece that is really, again, good to go back on. It's one of those things that we really notice when we start to run mail lists for clients, for organizations, that you kind of start to see those missing pieces. And so just having a couple, kind of audit queries and even some global changes in there. So check that you've got your primary addressee, your primary salutation. Hopefully those are required fields at least. But then making sure that if you also have a formal and an informal, whatever all of your other kind of standard addresses and salutations are, that everybody has one. If you use your nickname field all the time, make sure that you've got your, check for blank nicknames, like all of those things that you might not have as much time to carefully check as you're creating new records at year end. All of those kinds of pieces. So I think, Marlisa mentioned that we recommended doing like weekly, like your gift and record review. We oftentimes will set up kind of a whole group of audit queries for clients that they can check weekly, monthly, whatever. In an ideal world, it's your Friday afternoon activity or whatever, but those tend to not happen at year end. So, yeah, kind of all of those different pieces, ad sales, constituent codes. I'm trying to think through some of what the other big ones are. Sometimes it's the check mail if they're getting new addresses, make sure they don't have multiple addresses. If you did an NCOA at the end of the year, double checking that your seasonal addresses, are still accurate. I mean, a lot of the stuff we see when we do assessments, like Marlisa said, is around constituent codes and addresses and salutations. So I know there's a lot more. Those are the ones that are also kind of big projects we have going on right now. So that's what's on top of my mind too.
Yeah, yeah. Denise, what do you see around the
One of the things that I like to, and not everybody can do this because you don't always know the data the best, but I always like to look to see if about duplicate records. Like this should not be a new record. I know this is a person that's in the database. And a lot of that comes through the online piece where they did use a different name or like different email address, or there was no way to connect them to a previous constituent. And so I always like to do some data, kind of just like my own sanity check at my old organization to just make sure that I would catch a big donor before someone else would catch it. So I always like to do that with the record review piece.
Great. The other thing that we often see when we do assessments for people is also around gift posting and gifts just not being posted. For people who use Financial Edge, um, you typically then have to post because those two systems are talking to each other.
Mhm.
But for people who don't have Razor's Edge integrated directly with the financial software, it's so easy to forget about posting things. Um, so Denise, can you talk a little bit about, that and the impact and sort of the sanity checks?
So one of the biggest pieces with posting is just making sure you create your audit controls, and making sure at the end of the year, anything that you have as do not posted should truly be do not posted and flowing through to the financials. Also just double checking that you do actually post all the gifts that you say you should be posting. I do a lot of queries back and forth and make sure that like some events, some of our clients don't post those transactions and stuff. So I have some double checks of different appeals or different campaigns that never get posted.
Mhm.
And then also see what's out there that still says that it needs to be posted. But the biggest thing is also when you're posting and with adjustments or write-offs or anything like that, make sure that everything is following the process through.
Mhm. Yeah, and Steph, what do you see around posting when you're looking at the larger data sets?
Yeah, I think that's a good one too. It's sort of that check back into Razor's Edge that yes, this has been reconciled. Because I think I've worked
Mhm.
with clients in this job and also past jobs, in the organization of, where sometimes people will be like, it's just easier to change the gift if it's not posted. And I was like, that's exactly why we post it. It's kind of that, okay, it's reconciled finance and development or advancement or whatever you want to call at your shop, they match. We have agreed that these are the numbers that came in for the year. We have, at this point, probably told the IRS this is what came in. Or on our annual statement or whatever you're doing. And that is a great chance to go back and make sure that everything in Razor's Edge is posted. Because what that does then is, if something does need to change, it triggers you to have to do an adjustment, which then triggers, that extra communication of it's basically your way to track changes to the database. And okay, it was posted. We agreed with finance. I'm making a change. Now I know that this is something that finance needs to know changed as well. Whether that's a credit card refund, whether it's the donor calls and goes, actually, I wanted it to go to this specific fund instead of general operating, or you find out that it actually was a pledge payment and you have to go back and adjust it out of cash into, pay cash or whatever that looks like. So that posting is a huge one. I think just, for those purposes too, and it's also a way to know, if you're sending out your year-end tax statements to donors, it's your way of knowing, this is how the data looked when we ran all those final reports. So that posting is good. And the good thing is it's a little terrifyingly quick how fast it can plow through and, mark globally change gifts to posted. Um, so it's nice to kind of do that as one last sanity check. It feels good to kind of close the year out with it too. So.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something important because we have a lot of clients who say, well, it's not connected to financial software. Why does it matter if it's posted? And Steph, as you said, first of all, then people can't just change the gift willy-nilly at any time. And also it does show reconciliation. So Steph, I'll start with you and then go back to Denise. Talk about the timing. So Steph, you sort of talked about it maybe being a good year-end reconciliation. What are some pros, cons, best times
Yeah.
to do the reconciliation and then Marcus posted? What are your thoughts?
I mean, ideally, you're doing it when you're actually reconciling with finance. So I think for most organizations, if I had to guess, it's probably monthly, right? At least, depending, kind of going off of experience both with our clients and with, working from smaller to bigger organizations too. I would say probably the bare minimum is monthly that you're running your reports, hopefully. So whenever you send those batches, whatever that looks like, whether it's directly to Financial Edge, whether it's, pulling a really complicated export or not complicated, I guess, sending it to finance and they're putting their numbers on the finance system. And you guys, you're agreeing, okay, these numbers match. At that point, mark them posted. Um, I think I've worked places where maybe you push the gifts over, once a week. So they can kind of at least keep an eye on it, but they don't really reconcile until that first week of the next month. And then it's okay, we've got them changed. They're doing journal entries on their side. We're fixing it on our side. We agree, we match, post them. And it's just a way to say, okay, not that you can't change a gift later on if you have to adjust it, but I need to tell someone else that this change is happening now. Um, like I said, I think monthly is probably the most common cadence. Sometimes year end it might be like even halfway through December just because of the volume of it. And I know people are always antsy to get a year end number. So they might want to like, where are we at? And finance can't really tell them unless they have some of the gifts. So, a little room for flexibility, but I mean, I think we have some orgs that might do it weekly, or at least moving gifts over weekly to finance, but it's always balancing that on, how much are you changing? Because it is harder to change a gift once it's posted. But I don't know, Denise, with the clients we do, is it mostly month end reporting, I'm guessing, and
We
reconciling?
actually we actually have a lot of clients that do it every batch they post after just to get the
Oh well,
posting report and the journal entry.
sure.
I think they just kind of put that as a package to their finance side of the
Sure.
house, and so it just depends. I have them monthly, daily batch. and then weekly and stuff too. So it kind of just varies by the client and stuff that I see. And it really truly depends on your relationship with finance.
Yep.
So what their expectations are of you and, kind of what you're willing to give them too. And I think some of our clients that do it every batch, they just kind of, here you go, here's your journal entry from the foundation side of
Sure.
things. So that's where I've seen the difference.
One other thing, and Steph, you mentioned this setting. I think it was you, Steph. I apologize, Denise, if it was you. But the do not post is an option. So not posted, posted, do not post. Um, so Denise, what would be times to use do not post? What would be a reason to not post something?
So I can think of a couple of ours clients that track some miscellaneous stuff in their Razor's Edge that they don't want to come over to their financial software. It's kind of like the unwritten, this is going to come to us at some point, but we want to have some way to keep it on our radar, and they put it as do not post. Not always the best recommendation, but also a decent way to have that gift in there and on someone's radar. Sometimes I've seen it on the event side with credit cards and stuff where we don't want to post it, or finance already has the detailed and posted it before we get it. So if something's coming from finance, I sometimes will put it as do not post. So I'm not sending them another posting report and having them double count that revenue.
Mhm. Yeah, Steph, any additional things about do not post?
Um, when Denise said events, I went a different direction.
Yeah.
Gift in kinds, especially if they're going to be used in an
Mhm.
auction,
Mhm.
or a raffle or something like that, where you need to be able to thank your donor for it. You want to recognize it as something they gave to you, but finance doesn't want it on the books, right? Like it's not against your, now if it's a huge piece of equipment or something capital and finance wants to see it on their books, great. That gift in kind gets posted. The gift in kind that you're going to sell or, maybe give to a patient or, things like that. I worked at a children's hospital for a while, so we got a lot of knitted baby hats for the NICU. So we always, want to recognize the donor for that, but finance does not need to put that on their books. It's kind of a pass-through thing. So those we don't, I would put those do not post. The only other one I think of right off the top of my head is any like the actual recurring gift is usually do not post. The recurring gift pay cash, typically finance just sees it as cash. So that gets posted, but the original recurring gift do not post. Or like Denise said, any of that other kind of those things that you want to recognize, but they're not really things that finance wants to count yet.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and as an aside, just because I work with a lot of our clients on acknowledgments, just a reminder that in your gift in kind acknowledgments, don't include the gift amount. Just include what it was, and that's an IRS
mhm.
thing. Most of our clients know that, but every now and then I'll be reviewing their letters, and the gift in kind letter will be, "Thank you for your gift of X thing, worth X dollar amount," and just a reminder to not do that if you're doing that. The other thing that I think we see a lot around posting is the chaos of the sort of order of operations of an adjusted gift, because there's a couple of things that have to happen in there before and after with posting. Steph, can you talk a little bit about that and talk about, first of all, what can happen when you do it wrong and what the right order is, from the time you realize you have to adjust this, let's say, unposted gift.
Sure. Unposted, but finance already knows about it. Are you thinking?
Yeah, or even like it hasn't
Sure.
been posted yet, but the donor has called and there's something and you don't want to, just
Yeah.
willy-nilly change the gift.
Yeah, so I think we'll go, let's say they want to change let's say they want to change the fund on it. They want to change the designation. I think especially if that gift information has already been sent to finance and finance has considered it as a certain fund, um, post it and then go in and do your actual adjustment. What that does is you get to see that history on the gift too. So or if it's a recurring gift, it's an amendment, but adjustment, and you can see on the gift what the original fund was, and then you can see what date it was posted or what date it was adjusted, what the new information is, whether that's a new fund, a new gift amount, a new date, whatever. You get to see both what it was originally and what it is now. And then if you're integrated with finance and you post straight to Financial Edge, it also triggers another line for them on the adjustment, and it also or you can run an adjustment report and shows you kind of your list of changes that you've made in the last month. So it gets tricky if there's stocks or pledges and pay cash, and things involved. But I think as long as you kind of follow along the pieces that you want to change, it actually comes through pretty well. So.
Right. And I apologize if you said this, but also then remembering to post the adjustment
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. Yeah. Because I know we see, and Steph, you might be able to have more detail on this than I, but if you haven't followed those steps, so first of all, if you adjust before it's initially posted,
Yep.
or if you post adjust, which is correct, but then forget to post your adjustment, it
Yep.
can truly cause problems down the line. So can you think of what those problems are? I'm kind of blanking, but I
No,
know.
it's usually a matter of then what finance has on their side isn't going to match what you have on the Razor's Edge side. So they may see, let's say it was a $5,000 gift and it went to the general operating fund, and the donor calls and says, "Hey, actually, I wanted this to go to a scholarship fund."
Mhm.
Finance is your balances are gonna be off by 5,000 on each of those funds. That's
Mhm.
probably an easy example because hopefully you'll notice, oh, one's 5,000 high, the other is 5,000 low, and match them up. But that's usually where it matches. So if you don't also post that adjustment over or send that adjustment over, they don't actually get that. It's almost as if the gift. I mean, they just know that the gift is as it originally was entered to.
Mhm.
So without that change.
And I think too, it causes issues with data cleanup as well. Isn't that correct? Yeah. Because a lot of times we'll be trying to clean up data and be like, why is this one specific thing not cleaning up? And a lot
Yes.
of times those unposted adjustments are
Yeah.
the problem. Yeah. Um, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit, and you two can take a breath for a second because this falls in my area,
Mhm.
is workflows. This time of year it's a
Yeah.
little mythically quieter, and so it's a good time to think about what kinds of things could you automate, whether that's within Razor's Edge or outside of Razor's Edge. NXT does have some workflow capability. We've talked a little bit in the past, and two that I really love are setting up a workflow that on the anniversary of one of your monthly donors' first, recurring gifts, sending them an email, just thanking them, sharing a little bit about, what those monthly donations have done, for the organization. Just a really, really great way to thank those monthly donors who are really unsung heroes for your organization. And then the other one also that's a really great one and pretty easy to set up is a first gift kind of welcome series that you can set up through workflows. And so when someone makes their very first gift to your organization, it sends out an initial, thank you, welcome email. And then you can set it that maybe 2 weeks later, just another not an ask, but just a hey, just this is the good that you've done. Let me tell you this story about someone we've served. And then maybe in a month, another one. And again, not necessarily an ask, although you could have maybe a soft ask in there. But just like, hey, wanted to highlight this staff member or tell you about this service that a lot of people don't know about that we offer. So I think that is so nice because you can set it up and have it go, and it just keeps doing its thing in the background. External to Razor's Edge. And it's funny because we, so often as a company, we're talking about keeping everything internal to Razor's Edge and not having things external on the sides. But I think the two exceptions that we see right now that are powerful and worthwhile, Power Automate and Power BI. So both Microsoft platform products. Power Automate, just kind of what it sounds like. It's a way to automate things. It does integrate directly with Razor's Edge. Razor's Edge has made, Blackbaud's made their API available directly into Power Automate. So start thinking about some of the things that you, people on your team, have to do, every day. That's just a slog, around your data, whether it's reviewing the data, things like that. And think about, could I automate this? Is there a way to do that? Power Automate is a low code way to work with setting up automations. I won't tell you it's no code, and I won't tell you that it's always painless because it's absolutely not. But you can do things like, well, my favorite example is you can set up an automation that, let's say at midnight, it truly doesn't matter, 10 o'clock at night, that it will run a review of the gifts input that day. And if any fields have been missed, to Denise's earlier point, that it will send an email saying, hey, these gifts don't have a campaign, or, they're missing a letter code, something like that. So that's a really good example of something that Power Automate can do. Um, so just, start to think about those things. I think Blackbot is certainly, going all in on Power Automate and Power BI. So I don't know that we're going to see a lot more built out in the workflow uh, area, because I think really they're hoping people are going to use Power Automate. They run workshops in it, things like that. Power BI, if you're not familiar with it, is essentially kind of a dashboard, kind of reporting platform. But it's really powerful because you can connect bits of data that you don't normally put together. So you can create really in-depth and beautiful. I mean, the layouts are gorgeous. Reports, so whether you need something for your board, whether you just want to have something to check each week or whatever, different metrics. And again, because it can integrate into Razor's Edge directly, you can set it up and then set it up so that every week, day, month, whatever, that this will refresh on its own, and you'll have the new metrics right there in front of you. So also think about, what are those metrics we're always looking to get, and either I'm having to do the work myself, or oh, we just didn't think we were going to be able to get, a really nice, line graph, or, sort of whatever, any kind of chart, pyramid chart, whatever. Now you can, and get it fairly easily once you have everything set up. So I think that's another really good one. Steph or Denise, any things that you can think of that are great to either automate or have in Power BI?
Um, No, but one thing that you mentioned with the like with a workflow in the, first gift, I think now is also a great time to go through and see if you need to refresh any of your language in your letters.
Mm.
For the new year, sometimes, hopefully you don't have too much that talks about a specific year, but it's a good chance to go through and double check, do you want to change any of your language? Do you want to update it at all? Just kind of give it a little facelift for the next year. And the same with the welcome letters. Like, is there something new you get to highlight this year? If you have, a series of a couple of them, are they still accurate? Is the organization focusing on, a different priority this year that you want to highlight? Things like that. So that was one of them that I thought about. And then if you do have dashboards, if you have Power Automates, if you have, I mean, even going back to database, if you've got exports and things like that set up, it also can be a good time to go update all of your years in them, especially if you've got like summary stuff. I know there's been many times in the past where I've, have an export that maybe gives your last 3 years of giving, and you go to run it the first time and you're like, oh crap, I need 2026 now, but I don't need 2023 anymore. So just some of those updates too that, kind of house cleaning stuff as you roll over to the new year.
I think that's really good. Yeah, Denise, any things that would be on your wish list for either automations, charts, graphs, or cleanup this time of year?
I don't think anything else besides it's always good to ask the question, is this something that can be automated? I mean, I think every process that we're doing now is, can this be automated? Is there a workflow that can make this better? How can I use the tools to really maximize my time and investment? So just always be thinking about if there is a possibility of adding some sort of automation to anything that you do on a daily or weekly or monthly or yearly basis.
Yeah, I think that's really a important thing to think about. And stuff that when you talked about the letters, that made me think of something, because again, that's something I work with a lot of our clients on. It's a good time also not only to review the language in your letters, but to review the number of letters that you have. We see some clients who really drill way down in their acknowledgement letters. And so their letter codes are, 40, 50 deep, which first of all, really makes your gift processing, it presents some challenges for your processors. And also look at your letters from your donor's point of view. Because a lot of times I think that we as fundraisers feel like, um, everything that we are saying is important and valuable, and your donor's not always gonna think that way. So keep it light, keep it brief, and make sure that the donor is the hero. Your organizations are wonderful and important, but when you're thanking a donor, your organization is not the hero of the story. The donor is the hero of the story. So look at your letters from that point of view. Think maybe about how you can consolidate a little bit. If you're using Word and you have coding in Word, where you're using different if-then statements, could I consolidate by maybe getting rid of if I have a specific tribute letter, instead in my other letters, could I put an if-then in around if the honor memorial name is not blank, then drop in, a little bit of tribute language. If I'm using 20 letters for an event, instead could I have maybe one or two letters, but again, if then conditional on is my package about a sponsorship or tickets or things like that. So just maybe think of ways to A, simplify your letters, and B, reread them as the person who's just given you money, and how you want them to experience that thank you. Keep it sincere, make them the hero, make sure it's not dry or clinical. So that'd be my advice around letters. Um, so the other thing is, what things should people be thinking about as we go into spring? We've talked about spring cleaning a little, but one thing, for example, is events. In the event module, amazing thing, but boy, can it be a landmine. Denise, what things do you see, when you're looking at event coding around gifts?
The event coding that gets to be out of control to me is the and landmine is when you make a code for every single, if you make it too event specific. So if you have a gala and a golf outing and another event and everyone has sponsors, but you make it like platinum sponsor, gold sponsor, or whole sponsor instead of just putting in sponsor as the code so that you can use them over and over. I see tables that are a couple hundred deep because there's so event specific that they can't go through time. And so I also see where they started with tracking an event and it dropped off, or they thought they were going to track this event and they never did. So just some cleanup around that piece of things.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the things, Denise, that you mentioned was in the gift review, looking at things that are linked. And one of the things that we recommend in those gift review queries is including link to an event, link to a proposal, and it'll be a yes, no in your query. But that way, if you see, these are, event appeals and you look over and hey, they're not linked to the events, then, there's some issues. Steph, what do you see that we have to clean up a lot in
I
events?
just thought of one as you said that. One of the other things to check, which might be a little late at this point, but if you do year-end tax statements, double check that any of your event registrations, sponsorships, auction purchases, things like that, check the receipt amount on them. And make sure that you're using that correctly. Because I know we've seen it before. It's an easy thing to miss, especially if you're not linking your gifts to the event, where it can kind of handle some of that automatically for you. But your event registrations, I'm sure someone has an exception for me. But in general, your event registrations, raffle purchases, auction purchases, sponsorships probably are not fully tax deductible. So making sure that you account for that in there too. As far as other um, cleanup and things like that, I think Denise was like nodding along with her. One of the last places that I worked before this job, when I inherited the database, there were I think 1,000 different event not participation types, the unit types, because every year they created new ones. There was a presenting sponsor every year, but every year they created, whatever that themed name was. So it was, not just presenting sponsor year over year. Clean that up. It makes it so much easier for you moving forward. And if you're trying to do any like, year over year stuff or ROI reporting, um, anything consistent that you can do, the better. And then it flows into on your event forms. You can choose, you know, presenting sponsor from the table and have it on the form look like something different, say something different. So just kind of keeping that in mind too. Go through your tables. I think right now, knowing that everything's moving over to Unified View 2 is a really great time to try to dig through some of your attributes and your table cleanup, because sometimes it's a little bit easier to pull that data out in database view still too. So, especially attributes, custom fields, whatever you want to call them these days.
And I think you really touched on something important around the receipt amount, versus the gift amount. One thing I see a lot when I'm looking at our clients' databases in the event module is people are not taking advantage
Yeah.
of when they first set up an event, setting up the fair market value for the various sponsorships, premiums, things like that, which then in turn means that when you're linking those gifts, you don't get that automatic question, which is like one of my favorite things. It just fills me with joy when Razor's Edge asks you, "Hey, you have this receipt amount as this, but actually it should be this. Do you want me to change it?" And I'm like, "God, yes, I do."
Yes, I do.
So, I think that's so powerful. And yet, we do see that a lot of people do not take the
Yeah.
time to use that. So definitely look into that. It will make your life a lot easier. Plus, it's kind of nice year over year because then you know what your fair market value has been.
Hmm.
A lot of people can't always find that paperwork year over year. So it also, puts it all in one place. Um, so attributes, let's just do a real quick thing around attributes because that's always something in every database that we see.
Always.
Yeah,
It's
it
something.
just goes
That's a
off
great
the
way to put it.
rails.
It's something.
Yeah, yeah. I always say it's where good data goes to die. Because, you feel like, okay, I want to track this thing. This is critically important, but I don't know where to put it. And so I'm going to put it here in an attribute, which in theory is lovely. And please know, none of us here are saying don't use attributes. But I think, first of all, we a lot of times see people create an attribute for something that actually does have an existing field. Or someone 5 years ago created an attribute and the staff now is like, we don't know. We don't know why we have
I
that.
don't know.
Yeah, Steph, what are some things that you've seen that people tend to do with the attributes?
Oh man. I'm trying to think if there's anything we haven't seen in attributes. Honestly, that's one of the kind of fun parts of this job and working with so many different organizations is seeing how people use the database differently. But I think I feel like I should have been prepared for this question because then we'd have some good answers for it. We've seen all sorts of things in attributes. A lot of times we will see in gift attributes things that belong in other fields on the gift, especially around like the fair market value and the receipt amount. We'll see like some like fund distribution stuff in the attributes that could easily go in the GL distribution tab. Things like that, or maybe the gift subtype instead of putting an attribute of, whether it was a not a cash or check because that's the gift type, but maybe whether it came from um, it came from Blackbot or it came from like an ACH deposit, things like that will live on gift attributes. On the constituent attributes, the sky's kind of the limit on the things we've seen there. Constituent code kind of stuff we'll see in attributes a lot. And sometimes even like appeal or giving history or things like that that really can go on like on either on the appeal tab or on the constituent code. Again, I think it's what probably the best way to describe it, what we usually see the most that we recommend to clean up on the attributes is often leftover historical data, usually from a migration or a conversion. And I understand we don't want to lose this, so let's put it somewhere. And hey, at least it's not in a spreadsheet that no one knows about. But it also can be a good time to be like, hey, this was useful for a couple years, but now we've got enough history living where it's supposed to. Can we go wipe all of those out now? And sometimes that is a very satisfying process to just kind of, it's like throwing out the trash a little bit sometimes, or we found we've kept what we need in another place. This is what's left over, and everyone's just been kind of scared to get rid of it. But if you haven't used it or changed them in a few years, it's probably okay to get rid of it.
Denise, do you have any last thoughts on attributes?
The biggest thing that I think about with attributes right now is it can't come over into the dashboards.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so if I'm putting something in an attribute that I need in a dashboard, I need to find a different place for it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And
good
it's
point.
probably not the best place for it to be. I also think about that just like pulling data out. If I need to like summarize something by this, is this the best field to get that data pulled out? Is it even possible at some points in some data to get it out? So that's my last kind of point on
That's
attributes.
a really
Very
good
well.
point about the dashboards. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you both for taking time out of your very busy days. Very much appreciated. Our next webinar will be February 17th at 2 p.m. And this one is going to touch on some of what we just talked about, the NXT Survival Kit. And so this is going to be mastering the core essentials, one click at a time. So we all know it's out there. We know that NXT Unified View Switch
Coming.
is coming. Steph, you were at BBCon. Have they given a current date expected?
Not, I don't think anything different than what we've been hearing kind of end. I think in their last webinar, I'm sure someone else on this here, if you know the answer to this, feel free to throw it in as a
Yeah, throw it in as a
maybe not in the
question.
chat,
Okay.
but throw it in as a question or something. Please correct me. I think it has now shifted from like Q2 of 2027 to the second half of 2027. I feel like every time we get somewhat close, it gets bumped back another quarter as far as when database view will be sunset. I did ask, we have quite a few clients that use Omatic as well, and that is one that I went. I went like straight to the Omatic table and I said, guys, what's the plan for list management? Because we have quite a few clients that store a lot of data in list management. Um, and I'm like looking at our list here, and I see one of you on this webinar too. And they said they won't. Blackbaud has promised they won't take a database view away until all the plugins are figured out that are still live and what that looks like.
Mm.
So I know those are all kind of in progress, but the last I heard was second half of 2027, which I think even a year ago, Denise, when we went to BBCon in what would that have been? 2024, we laughed because at that point they had already pushed it from like 2026 to 2027. So yeah.
Yeah, but it's out there. It's coming.
It's coming eventually. Dun dun dun.
So,
So
all right. So please join us then. Thank you for joining us today. You will get an email with a recording of this session. If you have thoughts for future webinars, you can reply to that email and send it along with any feedback. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
thanks, Marlisa.
Thank you guys. Bye.